You're watching the LeanScaper podcast, where landscapers come to grow. If you want the systems, stories, and strategies to build a lean, mission-driven company that your team loves working for, keep watching.
I wanted to start today with a bit of background about myself. Some may have heard this before, either at a workshop and maybe even a little bit of Miami, but I'm going to go somewhere with this, so bear with me. I'm going to start the day I met Mark and how I got hired and what we did after, because it's all woven into what we ended up doing and then doing again. And it's the playbook I want to leave you with at the end of this. So 20 years ago, I started working with Mark, worked with Mark ever since. I've been working underneath him or with him on various things for the last 20 years. And the day I met him, I came in to do some training. In fact, this is pretty cool to see here today. There's two people that I saw that day, 20 years later. One of them I haven't seen in 20 years. Raylene's at the back, and Jeremy, I don't know where Jeremy is right now. There's Jeremy right there. So these are two people I saw my very first, not even day at TVG, my very first non-day at TVG, but what would be my first day. So we did some training on Dynascape, and which is the software company I worked at the time. I was a software programmer. I'm not a landscaper, never was a landscaper. And so we did this training, and at the end of the training, in the afternoon end of the training, Mark rolls in. He's missed the whole morning. I think he missed the day before. He wasn't there to get trained. I was there to train the staff. And he sits in for the last couple of hours, and then he says to me, "Do you want to stick around for a bit?" We stick around for a bit, and I remember Jeremy and Jim rolling in. You guys were bulldozing Brackmount. You were all mad that the bulldozer didn't have a cab. Jim's beard is frozen solid. But I'll never forget this. So this is all happening, and Mark says, "Do you want to stick around?" And so I stuck around, and he said, "You know, I could really use somebody with your background." I'm like, "I don't know anything about landscaping." He says, "That's okay. I don't really need somebody to lay pavers. I need somebody to help with operations. I just sold this job." And he rolls out what was at the time a $5 million residential project, turned into a $12 million by the time we finished all the change orders and everything. But looking at this was kind of enticing, right? Oh, well, that's pretty wicked. I've never seen anything like this before. So that got me a bit excited. And then he sat down and he said, "What are you making?" And I told him, and he said, "I'll double it." Okay, that was pretty exciting. And then he opened his QuickBooks. So when we think about mission and vision and value, I don't know how he knew what would attract me at that time, but he opened his QuickBooks. Who does this in a job interview? He opens his QuickBooks and he shows me what he's making, what his wife's making, what he hoped I would make, where we were going to be in 2 years, 3 years, and what I was going to make then. By now, I'm almost totally bought in, right? So what do you think? I'm like, well, this is great, but I happen to live about an hour and a half from Mark, in an hour and a half of the worst traffic in North America, or among it anyway. Like, yeah, but I got this traffic, and right now I live like 5 minutes from work, and I got to get all the way to downtown Toronto. And Mark slides a set of keys across the desk. He says, "I just bought this Jeep. I don't use it very much. I still need my truck. The Jeep's yours." Okay, I'm in. So that's the day I decided I was going to start working for Mark, and that's the day Mark's emotional intelligence found something in me and something in him that allowed him to have the courage to take that kind of risk on me and move forward. So I show up on my first day. I was talking to Raylene last night. She remembers. She's like, "Yeah, I remember you. You were like a computer guy, and you had like dress clothes on your first day, and you looked kind of stressed out." Yeah, exactly. Because I showed up thinking like I was going to help put these jet engines on this plane of a company. And what I didn't know is I was going to be doing that while the plane was flying, literally. This was a $4 million company roughly at the time that was not going to lose any of that $4 million, that was going to sell an additional $5 million, which turned into $6 million that year. And it was going to be all time and materials. And we were going to do 17 other things at the same time. I don't know a thing about landscaping other than the math on how to estimate, but I couldn't tell you what goes into building anything. And now I'm running Mark's operations, trying to keep this thing going. It took an incredible amount of work for a couple of years. I learned the hard way that, we can hustle really hard. We worked super long days all the time. But over a couple of years, things really started to change, and change so dramatically. It was incredible. That's the part of the story I want to share you with today. Eventually, to the point that we built up the systems required to get us to double, and then double that, and then eventually double that, that I ended up, Mark's like, "Hey, we should turn what these systems are that you're building into something that could benefit the whole industry." And again, I'm like, landscapers don't want to sell software. I remember the quote specifically. It was a Seth Godin quote who said one time, if you're going to build something, sell nuts to squirrels. Don't try to teach dolphins that nuts are delicious. And building LMN was like teaching dolphins that nuts were delicious. It's like, hey, you should know your numbers and you should do all this. And so I didn't. Mark's like, no. This is the right thing to do. We're going to do it. So we did it, and that worked out really well. The story I want to share with you today is about how to create an operations system from somebody that knows nothing about landscaping to be able to take something to a 10x the size it was when I started. And at the end of that 10x, be completely irrelevant and unnecessary so that I can go off and do something else. And the business runs without me. And eventually the business runs without Mark. And then we did it again with LMN. And so what I want to show you is like a repeatable model that's going to work, and how Lana is going to be a part of that. And so we're going to start with a loop. And so as we go through this, I'm just going to make some notes on here. I'm going to ask you guys to get involved with your tables for a little bit. So we'll just make some quick notes. And at the end of this, we're going to build an operations plan. But where do we start? Well, when it comes to operations, we probably start at chaos. That's the first part of the loop. And so chaos looked like this. Mark, he was different than he is today, but he was super bright. He already had a great vision for the company. He was a different person, right? Like a very different person. His evolution has been a gift to watch. I mean that literally, a gift to watch. It's inspiring. But at those days, there was a lot of chaos. We were going like heck. We were building stuff. We were getting stuff done. But also, it was like, hold on for the ride. It was Mark, his brother Jim. Jeremy was senior there. They were running our big projects. Mark and Jim were really experienced at running a landscape project. They could bang out jobs very quickly, very efficiently. But we were at the stage now where we're trying to do that at scale. And Mark's trying to hand the baton off to people, except for like, we're looking behind for the baton, and Mark's off chasing another guy with a suit with a big load of money and no baton, and trying to, how do we replicate what he's doing without knowing half of what he's doing? And for a couple of years, that was hard. It went 5 a.m. mornings. We'd meet at 5 a.m. and in that morning, because we knew the things we wanted to do. What has to happen in the morning to get the crews out on time? Well, we need to organize labor. They need to have all the right equipment and all the right tools. They know what they're doing that day. All those materials have to order. And then the real coup de grace was like, and the crews need to know exactly where they stand on this job, what we thought would happen, what is happening. And in those days, before software, that meant we were collecting all the paperwork that Jeremy wouldn't write and try to add that all up and try to get to the hours. I'll never forget, Jeremy left for a bit. Jeremy was from out east and came in, and then he had a couple other ventures. We kept coming back. And Jeremy, this is 20 years ago, remember, so I'm going to throw Jeremy under the bus here for a sec, but Jeremy was great at the work and not so great at the paperwork. I liken Jeremy's paperwork to getting a squirrel to take a passport photo. You can't get it to stop. When you do get it to stop, it like stares at you vacantly, and at the end of it, you have no documentation ever. Jeremy left one year and he came back, and when he came back, our office girl, Ingrid, we were doing soil tickets. A lot of the soil was time and materials, and she had stacked up like 200 loads worth of soil every day, because when you're delivering soil to this job and shaping or whatever, like we got 200 truckloads, like they want to audit that, right? They're not going to pay your word that we dropped 200 to it. There's a ticket for everyone. So poor Ingrid's organized every ticket in a pile by day, 200 and something of them, so we could build them properly. And then when we build them, we could go get audited and honestly show them, yeah, that's exactly what we dropped. Mark had conversations with Jeremy. Jeremy opens the office door, comes in for 1 second, the wind blows, every freaking ticket goes up in the air like a tornado, which is what we felt like we were conducting. Jeremy's like, hey, I'm back and I need the keys for truck 12 and I'm out of here, and he walks out. And I'll never forget our office manager's face to this day. It was like, she didn't say anything. She just started picking up the tickets, but in that, it was like, that is just the perfect metaphor for what's about to happen for the next couple of months while we get this going. It was a crazy, crazy time. That was our peak time of chaos. Now, Jeremy was awesome. And Jeremy then built his own business and built a bunch of, with the stuff that he learned on the way. Jeremy was somebody in the middle I'm going to talk about. But when you have this level of chaos in your operations, when everything is sort of reactionary, when you're dealing with issues instead of proactively preventing issues, which we'll get to, what ends up happening is your new people spend most of their time guessing. So they're guessing where to put tools, what I need to do each day, how things work, what we're supposed to do, what we're not supposed to do. And this might be a reason why in a year we had 50 staff, I would process between 150 and 200 record of employments, which meant we had to hire and fire about 3x or more the number of people we needed, which is not a sustainable way to run a good business. So that had to change for sure. And we'll get to why that's got to change, whatever. Now, that's the new people. Most of our churn was on new. Then you got your superstars. These are the people that you really count on. And when you've got a lot of chaos and reaction, these people get burned out. Mark talked about it the other day about like paddling upriver. And when they're constantly trying to do a good job and trying to please the owner or their department leader, trying to make the company successful, what ends up happening is these people get burned out because it's so stressful, right? You are genuinely, when you're a good person or good employee, you're genuinely trying to do the best thing you can. But when you're constantly reacting, you feel like you can't do the best thing you can. You feel like your results are not the best you can. And that you have this passion and this commitment to doing it, you just feel like an absolute failure. So there's that. And then everybody else, so not new, not superstar, what ends up happening is the rest of the people just end up waiting to be told what to do. And I think that's where most companies' staff lie. And I think that's where most companies find themselves in a difficult spot. It's hard. It's like, well, I can't get my staff to think about that, or my staff don't care, or my staff. Generally, what we're going to talk about in the next couple of sections here is why this happens. Things are so chaotic, and they're not well scripted, and things aren't clear. And they don't have to be accountable, or even if they were accountable, things have changed so much that they're just like, I'll just wait to get told exactly what to do. And so it comes off as apathy, but it's a symptom of a bigger problem. And problems in operations, this might be something worth writing down. Problems don't repeat, they multiply. So really, what does that mean? Well, let's take a real example. So it's like 7 in the morning. The crew worked yesterday at site all day. But at 7 in the morning, we get told like, hey, we need the concrete there this morning. Well, when? Well, we're ready to go at 7:30. Well, getting concrete at 7:30 in Toronto isn't the easiest thing that day. So I got to start calling concrete company. And so the concrete's going to be late because we didn't find out the day before. But while you're scrambling to call the concrete company, what happens? Well, crew B left, and you didn't get to give them the instruction to grab the equipment, tool, or material they needed to go to leave properly. And what else happened? Well, vendor A over here was going to drop materials off, but it wasn't clear where. So they're just now going to head to your shop rather than where you think is going to happen on the job site. And then so you're hearing this load get in here. Now you're like scrambling. Oh, shoot, I got to deal with this load. I got to get somebody else to now reload this on our truck to deliver it out to site because that crew is going to wait. I've got to get these guys stopping to doing something. So now they're losing productivity. And while this happens, the concrete truck that I finally got scrambled at the end, got late. We didn't give them enough information. And as they drove up the steep driveway to drop where the concrete is, the concrete spills out the back. This is real. The concrete spills out the back of the truck, ruins the driveway up the thing. And now I've got a multiplier problem, right? It all started with, hey, I was late to order the concrete. Now I have a $50,000 driveway repair. I have this job that's fallen behind. I have this job worth of materials that I'm going to spend thousands of dollars in productivity to get back to where it needs to get to. Problems multiply. And so it's couldn't be more important to solve these problems, especially the ones that continue to happen. And so I want to pause right there for a sec. We're just going to do this a couple times today, and we're going to do it really quick. So unlike some of the other things that we did today, we'll do one at the end, but unlike some of the others, this is not a 15, 20-minute exercise. This is a 30-second exercise, each person. I just want you to turn to your table. I want you to think for a minute. I want you to write it down. What area of your business has the most chaos? And then I want you to tell each other at this table what you think the most area is with a 30-second or less explanation. We don't have much time here. We're gonna spend about 5 minutes on this in total. 10 people, 5 minutes. But look at each other, be accountable to each other, and tell each other what your biggest area of chaos is. All right. If somebody at your table said something profound, or you think you said something profound, can we get 2 shares? Biggest problem area of operations. We got one over here.
Clarity and communication.
Clarity and communication. Give me a 2-second. What is that problem resulting in for you?
Chaos.
Chaos. Okay. One more. Over there.
Yeah, for us, it's just the generally like scheduling and rescheduling when something isn't finished. So if we got to go back to a job and now we're in a tree service, so our jobs are generally 1 or 2 days. But then if they go over, they can't finish in a day, and we got a half day or another day. We got to go back, but the schedule's already set for 3 weeks. So then we got to bump everything around and reschedule. So always chaos.
Multiplies.
Yeah.
It multiplies. Schedule is a perfect example of the problem that multiplies. This day changes, but now every day for the next 3 weeks changes because we got to deal with this. So great example, for sure. The next part of our journey started with the problems that we were trying to fix. The first is like, yeah, how do we get rid of this chaos and build something that is predictable for people? Because if I can predict that after Mark's finished selling a job, we need to do those 30 things that we talked about a few minutes ago, then great. That makes that easy. If as a crew lead out in the field, Jeremy can predict that I'm then going to hand them a complete job package that says you need this, and Jeremy can go run a job that is tight and gets done on time. And if these are the things we need to get back in order to know that that job went on time, great. Now we have a system for that, and I'll get to some of that as well. We want to replace memory and people's knowledge with systems. This is good, but it's not going to get you very far. This is way better. This is repeatable. You can only grow your business so much, obviously, on memory and intuition. So systems are what steps in behind. And when we talk about SOPs and all the things that we're looking at, everything in the Lean docs that we're leaning in on Lana on, we'll talk about this more. This is really about building the systems that stop us from relying on people's memory and start us executing repeatedly, no matter who's executing, whether they're new, old, big job, small job. This is the way we run. It reduces, for the people that are key, the number of decisions they have to make. When the systems are clear, then your job as a leader is just to make sure that those systems, A, are clear, and B, are happening. If you don't have systems, then your job as a leader is to fill every single hole that is leaking because of those systems. And that's impossible, and it's not fun, and it's burnout. And then the last thing we want to do is help take people from feeling this burnout and take them from feeling accountable and empowered. And that this had such a profound impact on the way we ran TBG and the results that we got out of TBG, that this end result, this byproduct of what might feel right now like, well, this is something that's good for our people, and maybe or maybe not, that doesn't resonate with you as being more important than profit or whatever. This will probably have your biggest impact on profitability as a byproduct rather than focusing on profit. This, for us, was the key, and I'll share an unexpected result for me. And so this journey for us, but I'll get there in a minute. This journey for us started with Lean. 4 books that had a really, really big, significant impact on our transition 20 years ago. So I'm sure lots of good books since then, but Toyota Way, Mark was first thing handed me his copy of the E-Myth Contractor Edition. So that was, sort of profound about systems and replacing yourself and the things you need to do that. Charles Vanderkooy's book on landscape estimating and budgeting and pricing was super important as a foundation. And for me personally, a book called The Goal, which was a book by Ellie Goldratt, which if you haven't read is just like full of such common sense about what to fix and where, which is why we started on the chaos thing. What's your biggest area of chaos? If your chaos is a multiplier, then it makes, you don't have to, but it makes a lot of sense to start there because that's the thing that's having the most severe impact on everything else because its problems are multiplying in all kinds of problems. So we started on this journey of lean. Toyota Way was really the book that sort of kicked it off. I'd read it, looked behind Mark, he's got it on his shelf when we were talking that first day. And we started applying the principles of lean to landscaping. So the Toyota Way is all about manufacturing. There's the 9 wastes. There's things that you would have heard us talking about in Accelerator, about eliminating. It is not just a process or a theory, it's a mindset. And the big part of that mindset was every unnecessary step in our process is lost revenue. And lost revenue when you're dealing in landscaping, so if you're doing high-end design build and your lost revenue is $150 of revenue produced per hour, and there's 4 people in a crew, then every hour we lose is $600 of lost profit. So it just quickly became, wow, this is absolutely what we need to focus on. And so we started building systems instead of superheroes because they were hard to find. People like Jeremy were hard to come by all the time. We had a few good ones, right? And a few, certainly Mark and Jim started that, and there was a few people that took what they did and were able to replicate it. And there was a whole bunch of people that couldn't replicate it. And it was, even if you could, it was stressful and hard and go. So away we went at taking what was in the brains of Mark and Jim and trying to deploy that at scale to a whole bunch of other people with systems so that everybody kind of knew what to expect. We started with things like the budget. I couldn't possibly help estimate or price work without understanding what Mark needed to do to be profitable. And so the budget was originally a spreadsheet. It turned into LMN in a really big way. But that was our first kick at the can at like, okay, how do I take the financial stuff that's in Mark's head, what he wants to do with the business, where we want to go, and how that impacts how we price jobs. Impossible by myself, completely possible with a budget once I learned how to do takeoffs. Takeoffs was the next thing. So I've never built a paver patio, much less a gunite swimming pool. But each time we built something complicated, we put it in a template so that next time we could. So our swimming pool template had like 250 items on it, but that allowed me to not only estimate this pool accurately, but know exactly what I had to order, know the quantities, give the crews a checklist to say, here's all the stuff you need to get this pool done so that they could turn around and on time give us the orders that they needed to do to order that stuff in a way that we would always have it available there. So it had like, again, it had a multiplier effect of like, oh, good, we're now priced right. We are planned better. We know what to bring. We know what to ask for. We can job cost better. We can order our materials better. This starts having a multiplier effect in the positive sense as we do. So templates were big. Then we went down 5S. And this meant the shop got reorganized. And then 6 weeks later, reorganized. And then 6 weeks later, reorganized, because this stuff does not stick at first. But we kept at it. Then we did our trucks and our trailers and got them organized and standardized. The job sites, the office, everything got 5S. The trailers got so 5S that there were labelers on the trailer so you could continuously 5S it as you went. That's a big thing from Toyota Way and certainly made a big difference in the way we handled stuff. And again, multiplier effect here. Stuff was neater. It was safer. When you walked on a trailer, you knew exactly what you were missing. In the old days, when the trailers were a mess, you walked on a trailer. Are we missing something? I don't know. Are you going to check it every day? No chance. So we just drove away. And then we'd figure out we were missing it when? The moment we needed it. Yeah. And now we're hours behind. Well, instead of that, if we just have a trailer that's so well organized, I could just look in a bin where the PL premium is supposed to be and say, we don't have any PL premium. Great. Then we put in an order and get it brought to the shop. And we put bins for every trailer with their trailer number on it. So they would tell us what they needed to order. We'd order it from the local hardware store. They would deliver it, or home supply store, and we'd dump it in their bins. So they could just pull in at night, grab the stuff out of their bins, restock their trailers, away you go. The invoice had what trailer it went to, so we know what trailer. Very streamlined, very systemized, but also had this multiplier effect. Imagine the impact of not being without the materials that you needed when you needed them. And that allowed us to do thousands of dollars more a year per crew in revenue, because we weren't being held up or we weren't stopping for stuff when we didn't need to. Repair boxes in the shop. This was another system that constantly we had broken tools getting grabbed by people to go out to do work, that then they found out when they got there, this doesn't work because somebody put a broken tool down near all the other tools, and now I don't have this. And so one by one, we started going down this lean transformation route. So what we were doing at first, we're transforming operations. And this is why we're also starting here with Lana. What we're doing with the SOPs is starting to transform your operations. Now, it's only the first step, but it's a critical first step. You can't transform your people until you make it clear what's expected and how we're going to run efficiently. So that's the first step. And when we have your mission and your vision, now we know where we're going. And we have your SOPs, so we know, oh, this is how you run every little micro decision to get there. Now we can really start doing some magical stuff with people to tell them exactly what's expected of them in order for us to achieve the mission and vision that you've set for both your company and even for the people that work in it. So it's a critical first step, and it is the first step that we started with. This step is your clarity step. And so when you're in clarity, what you're trying to do is make what you want to happen clear to everybody else. And we're going to get how to get it deployed to everybody else in the next chapter. But the first thing that we want to do is we have to figure out how we're going to run things in a way that everybody's going to understand consistently every single time. So what I want you to do now is go back to your tables again. 30 seconds, same as we did last time. We got 5 minutes, so keep it quick. But everybody talk about, if you had one thing that you wish your crews would do every time, what's one procedure, SOP, etc., that would make a pretty profound difference if your crews just did it every single day? Share that with your table. This is going to be a commitment to you and a commitment to your table. Give other people ideas on what we can go back and fix. So I want you to spend the next 5 minutes telling each other in 30 seconds or less, what's one SOP that would make a big difference? Okay, can we get 2 new shares? 2 shares, something you heard at the table, something you thought of yourself. What is one SOP that would make a profound difference? We got one in the back there. Share what and why.
Hi, Matt from Local Roots. One of the things that we were just discussing is the final walkthrough for the projects that we just seem to do the install and then it's finished. We send the invoice and that's the end of the day. And so I think that being able to go through a final walkthrough, do your punch checklist maybe the second day prior to finishing up and scheduling that out. So then there's more finality to the project. And I think that the clients would be, I think there's a better chance of them either giving you a good review or passing your name off to another customer for us. And so I think it's a way to salvage the client, create finality to the projects that we're doing.
100%. And then from a operations mind, the final walkthrough checklist is a brilliant example of the the problem multiplier, right? What happens when we don't do that and we leave? Well, client's unsatisfied. Okay, that's one. Number 2, well, we got to go back and fix it. So now we've disrupted a schedule, which disrupts another schedule, which disrupts another schedule. How's cash flow? Because we're supposed to pick up a check today. Now we can't pick up a check because we got a client who's upset. Now I don't have cash flow to buy materials for the job that I'm trying to sell over here. It's a problem multiplier and it's a wicked one. Thanks for your example. It was good.
We decided our morning rollouts, just chaos. And it starts with first we got to see who's showing up for work or who's late. which is just an ongoing battle for us. One of the thoughts that we have to reduce our morning chaos is getting better on our daily wrap-up SOPs on jobs so that we know what we are walking into every morning. That'll help to create or lessen the chaos.
100%. Daily wrap-up for me used to be on my 90-minute to 2-hour drive home that should only take 30. It was way too late in the day talking to everybody on the phone, trying to figure out what happened so that I could frantically take notes so I didn't forget anything when I got home instead of eating dinner, so I could wake up at 5 a.m. and go try to solve all those problems before they happen. That's no way to live, but you're on the right trail, right? It's like morning problems are probably because the day before problems, and if we can get those day before problems before 6:30 p.m., we're probably in good shape to do a better job. And so I'll get to that next. I want to talk about that next. So we started with chaos, and then we designed some clarity. Our next step now is how do we deploy this? Because if you're like we were, and I'm sure if you've tried this stuff for yourself, the magic happens when people buy in, but that's not easy. So there's systems that usually don't fail because they're bad ideas. Systems usually fail because the people just failed to execute them. For Ryan from Creativers and I were talking about this yesterday, it's so important to get the people bought in, or else none of this stuff happens. And I was a big person who was guilty of not realizing this. So when we rolled this out at TBG and we started doing all these systems I'm talking about, and like you'd 5S the shop and 6 weeks later it's back to messy again. Then you'd say, hey, you got to fill out this paperwork, and it happens for a week and then doesn't happen for a week and then half happens for a week, and you just want to give up. And that's exactly what I recommended we do. So at the end of the first year doing this, we got a bit better. But when Mark and I were talking about it, I said to Mark, like, I think we might have been more efficient had we just like not done any of this training and discussion and just lived with the problems and worked through them. We would have saved more time, and because we wouldn't be trying to 5S everything. And Mark said, no, it doesn't feel right. We're going to do this again, and we're going to do it even bigger. That next year, we started taking all the things we were doing and we got together in meetings and we got to talk about them. So we had now, before any of this like sort of meeting deployment that we talk about in the accelerator program, the 4 core meetings, even back then, before we realized what it was going to be, we had at least 3 of them going. And those 3 meetings looked like, and those were to replace the meetings that Mark and Jim and I were having at 5 a.m. in the morning to try to think about this. We needed 3 meetings to happen a day. One was the crew rollout in the morning. So the crew had to have a daily crew huddle. We had to have another crew huddle around lunchtime where they then submitted their needs for the next day, right? Think that day ahead. So I had all afternoon to react to that. And then we had our weekly crew meetings, and the weekly crew meetings were no joke. They ranged from me putting together a PowerPoint presentation on one of the wastes each week, and then talking about some examples and how we can solve them. And then we had crews come in with ideas and demonstrations on how they solved those issues. And that was really good because then they started taking ownership. And everybody started to understand not just what we were doing, but why we were doing it. Because at the same time, Mark also started communicating to people that, look, I want to make your lives better here. I want to pay more. In fact, I want to incentivize you with pay. And we started working on this pay for performance incentive system. So now we had these really compelling reasons of waste why things were important. We had a good reason. We could make a lot more money. We could pay everybody a lot more money. We just had to do this stuff. And if it meant sitting down, and I know Mark said this at Miami, and this is not a joke, if it meant sitting down and reading an entire business book for a morning in a meeting, that's the kind of stuff we did. Who Moved My Cheese? For sure. The entire book, cover to cover, just sat down and read it. So on the surface, if you were like me, you thought like, this is nuts. We don't have time for these meetings. We got to go. Those meetings were the foundation of building something that eventually freed up myself and freed up Mark and freed up the people in it. Jeremy went on to grow his own really successful business from the lessons he learned. Jeremy is now working with John to solve all the same problems that we just talked about for the last 5 minutes, because he's been there, he's learned it, he's done it. You talk to Jeremy if you want any help there. But this is so important. And I want to share with you an example of why this is so important. Recently, Mark and I went to a conference about CEOs. And every year in this conference, they take you on a little adventure. They don't tell you what it is. So you're just on the bus. And then you find out when you're on the bus what you're going to do. And all they told us was bring a swimsuit and bring closed-toe shoes. Okay, that sounds good. Where are we? New Orleans. Okay, what are we doing? Kayaking with gators, something like that. It'll be something crazy. All right, good. So we get on the bus. We're going out. I'm not a fan of kayaking with gators, but whatever. We get there and it didn't look like an adventure guide at the front. In fact, he was wearing a military outfit. And what did he say we were doing? Helicopter underwater egress training. I thought egress was a bird. I don't know what this is. This is they're going to drop your chassis of your helicopter underwater and drown you, and you got to figure your way out. And he's going to tell you how to get out. And I'm going somewhere with this. This simple, basic instructions we got on the bus there. What do you need to do to get out? And he's delivering it as matter of fact and as clearly as you would expect from an ex-Marine. The first thing you need to do is brace. We're going down. I'm going to yell brace. You're going to hold on. When we hit that water, it's going to knock you around. The next thing you're going to do is locate. So once we hit the water, you're going to put a hand on your seatbelt so you know how to get it off, and you're going to put a hand on a window because we don't know what happens with that helicopter when it goes underwater. Could turn, it could whatever. It's going to get you out. The third thing you need to do is breathe. When that water hits your navel, it gets up to your mouth real quick after that. So hold your breath because it's coming. Then fourth, and this is really key, fourth is push. You need to put 40 pounds of force on the corner of that window to knock it out. And last, unbuckle. Okay? 4, 5 simple instructions. Couldn't be an SOP clearer to a room full of CEOs. Smart, motivated, your life's on the line, and it's 5 words. That's all you got to remember. Of 25 CEOs who went under the first time, how many do you think needed a scuba diver to rescue them? Not quite all, but 12 out of 25 needed a scuba diver. Why? Well, they didn't explain the why. What was the important part of the why? The important part, these ones were pretty easy to remember, especially breathe. The order of this was incredibly important and not explained. Nobody explained why we did it that way. So what happened when the water got up? Everybody unbuckled. What happens when you unbuckle and you push against something? It's like you're in space. You just go backwards. Now you're unbuckled. You're not getting back buckled up when you're going underwater. That's just not happening. So you just sit there and knock on the window until the scuba diver pulls you out from the inside. Very important. And what I mean by this is the why is so important when it comes to an SOP. It can be as clear as day, and your life can be dependent on it. You don't not want to follow it. You just didn't follow it because that wasn't your instinct and you didn't know why. And so most of our staff are like that. There's certainly people that don't care, but I hope you don't have too many of those people in your organization. So it's incredibly important that we communicate the why. And the why in terms of communication comes down to 3 major things. The first, and again, I'm terrible at this. Anybody on my old LMN dev team will tell you this. We did it. But when Mark said we're going to have meetings we're going to have a meeting with every report once a week, every week, and you're going to have department meetings this, and we're going to have like this really cadenced meeting structure. It's the same thing with the landscape company. We're going to have weekly meetings with crews. We're going to have daily meetings. They're going to have a daily meeting and get you the information. These are rhythms of meeting, but these are our opportunities to do what Mark talked about at the very beginning of the first day, which is like once your job as a leader is to set the direction, then you just keep pushing that direction. That's your job, to just keep saying where we're going and how we're going to get there over and over and over again. And what these rhythms, these meetings allowed us to do is continuously reinforce what we're doing and how we're getting there. The other was data loops. So this is information going back and forth. This is things like what we used to call the 4 o'clock 4, but that's the meeting that you have at lunch to figure out what you need. What were our goals? What's getting in our way? What do I need for tomorrow? And is it information, materials, labor, equipment? We broke that down. So as long as I was getting that information every single day, I could organize that stuff. so that next day it was ready. And then the last was technology. And as we grew, as we built the crude technology that eventually became LMN, and then as we built LMN, and then as we deployed Basecamp, things started to get a whole lot better. In fact, as we started getting to Basecamp, what was really happening was a transition of every day, all our crew leads coming back to operations to order stuff, to every day they started to order stuff. Because once we deployed what we called the TBG hub at the time, which automated our workflows, and this is where Lana's going, so stick with me. But once we automated our workflows, once we made it clear where to get the materials, once we told everybody the source code for what I did and what Mark did before I did it, now they all had the power to do it. And all we had to find was good crew leads. And despite me thinking at the time that it was absolutely insane that we would ever have crew leads that could order material. Like, do you know how many times I called a vendor? You know how many times I called the vendor because I wasn't the crew lead? I wasn't on site. I didn't have all the information. Like, half the problems I was dealing with was because I wasn't the best person to do that. In fact, the person who's running the job is the best person to do that. And so as we transitioned with technology, with loops, and with meetings, things started to get a whole lot better. Very quick, because we're going to go into the last piece here. As we started to develop flow being the daily meetings, the information going back and forth, what that ended up giving us at the end of that was freedom. Every crew lead started to run their own jobs from start to finish. They were responsible for getting the materials. They were responsible for organizing the equipment. They used technology like Basecamp, like LMN, like the hub, to figure out what they need to do and have that stuff automated and go to all the right people. But then they became responsible for the jobs. Mark also gave them an incentive program that helped them supplement or bonus on top of their wages based on what their productivity was. So now they had the source code on how to do things correctly, and they had an incentive system that made it easy to do things correctly and clear to do things correctly. And then even better, what happened was, so I started at TBG at like 4 million in sales. By the time we were getting close to 20, Mark said, you want to go run LMN? And I said, okay, I'm off to do that. And guess what? They didn't even replace me. All right? I was completely unnecessary. And for those who are a little scared of that, because if your job is that, I would tell you, like, but then what you go on to do is something way better. Because if you can do that, you're insanely valuable, right? You're more valuable. So you'll get an opportunity to do something probably even cooler. You won't have the same headaches. You won't have it. And then if you can do that, like we did at LMN, then we can go on and do that again. We're going to do that again in a different way. And we're going to do it in a way that's even more inspirational and feels every better to go to work every day. This is like the dream. And for you, when you sat down with Mark yesterday and you wrote down your 10-year vision, this is the path to get to that 10-year vision. This is the path to be successful, to achieve what you wanted in your vision, to free yourself up, to give other people the opportunity to succeed in what you're doing now, and you go off to do something bigger, better, more fulfilling. Or if your 10-year vision's to get back in the field and plant plants, you get to do that as well. I don't care what it is. But this is the recipe for getting there. The more things flowed, the less I was needed. And this was profoundly impactful on TBG, which then after I left, went on to double again. And that's not easy when you're doing over 20 million. It also became the most productive company on the top 100 list. You just divided sales by number of staff. It was not even close, the most productive company. So not only did they not even need me, they were twice as productive as most of the companies on the list. It's an incredible overall transformation. And if you design it to do it like this, and if you communicate to everybody how to do it like this, you're going to be able to achieve it just like we did with that and just like we ended up doing with LMN again. And this is why we're building Lana, because we know it can be done. It's just hard to do it. And it's certainly hard to do it one company at a time. And so we're going to build the tech and the tools to help you in this order create the exact same systems in your company so that you can achieve the freedom, whatever that freedom is to you, to achieve what you wanted to do yesterday. Lana's going to help you get there. So in the last 15 minutes of today, what I want you to do is now build your one-year operations plan. If you look at page 57, there's 3 questions. And I want you to start this 15-minute session with those 3 questions. So your questions here are like, hey, what happens every week that says we have to fix this, but we haven't got here yet? Or if you were paid $1,000 per day, that your crews finished 30 minutes early, what would you do tomorrow to make that happen? Because that is what's going to happen if you finish 30 minutes a day, every day early, especially at scale. And if your company doubled overnight, what would give you the most anxiety that it would fall apart? So think about those 3 questions, jot down a couple bullet note answers. And then what I want you to do, I want you to go into your Lana and I want you to prompt not just give me a 1-year operations plan. Yes, start it like that. That's your first sentence. And then next, give it a bit of context. These are the things I need to fix right now. These are the things that I think if we did, we would have an immediate improvement in our productivity. And these are the things that scare me about growing. Let that guide your operations, but it's going to kick out an operations plan by quarter for you for the next year that I hope you can take with you. We're going to work on that. And as you're using GPT of any sort, but especially as you're using Lana, give it some more context, give it some more information. It's going to remember this stuff. It's going to learn from it. It's going to start understanding the goals that you want, and you're going to get a better result. So you can go in there and you can say, give me a 1-year operations plan. It'll absolutely do that. But if you give it a little bit more information, you're going to go 1-year operations plan that's a little bit better than what it'll actually spit out. It'll be a little bit more customized. So there's a good example of taking your notes, baking it into a prompt that'll get you even better results. So yeah, I just want to close out. Like, I got to live this moment of coming from 0 experience to watching a company double and double and double and double, and then actually being unnecessary. And that was such a cool experience. And then getting it to do a second time really hammered home that this works. And then now as we do it a third time and we try to do it not just within the company, but at scale and try to fix this whole industry that we're building, I believe it. I believe it. I know our people believe it, and we have Mark to thank for that. I wanted to take a minute. Mark did something super nice for me the other week, a couple weeks ago. So I'll just stop me. I wanted to take this minute because I couldn't imagine having a better opportunity to learn and be corrected by and get the opportunities that you've given us. Most of all, the opportunity to do something that we just love. And so thank you for the vision that you've given us and the opportunities that you've given me. It means the world. For the rest of you, I want you to know that we're going to try to do this for all of you, and we're going to do it through Lana, and we're going to change this industry. I believe in him. You should believe in him. We're going to make this happen. If we all believe in him, it will happen. It absolutely will happen. And so I just ask you today, don't leave with inspiration. Take that plan that you just built, leave with the plan, go do it. It will work. I promise you. Just stick with it. It'll work. Thank you, everybody. Benji's going to close this out.